Hi everybody, Reyes here to do the wrap up for Real Housewives Dallas episode 9. Well, I don't really know quite where to start on this episode. There really isn't a whole lot of levity that I can bring to this episode, but I will do my best. Start from the beginning. I was really looking forward to this trip, and pretty much everybody was in a good place. Cast-wise, we were all getting along, and it seemed like a really fun idea to go down to Lake Travis and do a little Austin weekend. So, starting out, and we had, an amazing road trip planned inside the van. We had great food and drinks, and everything seemed like it was going quite well. Except for the fact that we didn't have a bathroom. But it went downhill quickly. As you saw, like an hour into our van ride, we got the insertion of the story about Leanne shitting in a bag in the back of a car. And I was completely baffled when this was brought up. Number one, I had no knowledge whatsoever at that point that Taylor had even said anything about poop to any of the girls. Leanne and poop. Had no idea that conversation even happened at the cocktail party. And then, of course, now that I've seen that footage, and I saw that Taylor was entertaining Stephanie and Brandi with, he thinks they're the all fart and poop girls, which they kind of are. He was entertaining them with a story about Leanne pooping her pants. Well, then, of course, this episode comes in, and we get Leanne shitting in a bag in the back of a car, which is completely different from what, Taylor said in the cocktail party episode. So even besides that, I knew I had never discussed that birthday incident with Taylor, or really anybody else for that matter. Leanne and Tiffany and I were in the car, and it was funny at the time it happened, and we all laughed about it, and then 13 years went by. So when that came back up, I was like, whoa, somebody spilled the beans, because the actual use of the words pooping or shitting in a bag in the back of a car are pretty specific. And I knew it wasn't me. I hadn't said anything about that. So I immediately took offense to them saying that, oh, well, Taylor said you said that. And I was like, no chance, because I didn't tell him that story. However, it kind of died down, and I felt like Leanne handled it really, really well on the van, and I thought things were, moving, toward a path of us being able to have a good weekend, and I didn't really think it was going to cause an issue. And then we get, obviously, to the lake house, and, Brandi and Stephanie, as you saw tonight, were in their room bringing it up, saying, well, I really wish it was true. And, of course, Tiffany kind of rolls her eyes and is like, and walks out. She could have just kept that to herself, but she chose not to. She chose to go back outside and inflame Leanne even more. It's like she was already upset by it. She dealt with it on the van. Let the subject die. I mean, why are you torturing your friend with something that obviously she's uncomfortable with? But she brought it up again, at which point I was like, I will polygraph on this one, because it wasn't me. I mean, I'm not really sure that Poopgate needs to be, verified by a polygraph, and I've never taken one before, but I was more than willing to do so because I knew that it wasn't coming from me. I had no idea the level of anger that continued to build from that moment until we get to the end of dinner. So as far as dinner is concerned, I hope you guys really enjoyed that. The food was really, really incredible. And, the girls had been drinking all day. So there were bottles of champagne and wine on the bus, which was noon. By the time we get to Austin, as you saw, there were broken glasses and more, more wine plus some shots. So yes, dinner was, everybody had been drinking multiple hours by the time we got to the dinner. I started to get a little bit worried, only because, Brady started doing gymnastics on the table, and I was concerned the chandelier was so close that I just saw her doing this. I wasn't quite sure how much she was going to get into the gymnastics, and I was afraid she was going to hit her head literally on the chandelier. So I was like up there like playing, Spider Woman with sharp objects when that was going on. And then what you guys missed, after dinner, there was a twat twerking competition against the wall, and I did not partake. I was actually the horrified nurse running around thinking these people are going to like not have the strength to hold themselves in their hands, since some of them have not done a handstand in probably 30 years, and we're on like concrete floors in the middle of nowhere, probably 20 minutes from even a CVS minute clinic. So I certainly had a lot of stress, I would say, throughout the afternoon, evening, prior to the scene that obviously everybody wants to talk about. We went to bed, we kind of all got ready for bed, we all dispersed to our rooms, and I came down to get a bottle of water from the kitchen. And the fight that ensued was just Leanne and I in the kitchen. She was incredibly disturbing. She was violently angry. She was almost demonic sounding. That's the only way I could really describe it. She charged at me and grabbed, there was a large crystal bowl on the island in that kitchen, and she grabbed it as she was screaming, "I'm gonna gut you." She slammed the bowl across the island, and I ran to the other side of the island as the bowl and the nuts went off one side. We continued to go round and round the circle of the island until at some point we got face to face. She didn't strike me, but the argument was of such an intensity and incredibly mean. And believe me, it was, when she said, "I'm going to gut you, I'm going to slaughter you, that's how we take care of people like you in the carny world." She then went on to say that she was going to buy dog food from Taylor's pet shop and tell everybody on social media that her dog died, so he would go bankrupt. Lots of threats. And the sane part of my brain that was remembering that this is a person that I've had a long-term relationship for like 19 years with was telling me she doesn't really mean what she's saying. She's not really thinking about the consequences of what she's saying, and she doesn't mean it. But the reality is she said all of those words, and she was incredibly, incredibly scary. I was a little disappointed that no one came out to help me, that no one came out to intervene. Not that that was their job, but I do know that several of them went to grab their phones, and they could have called 911, but they chose to record, which I think did bring a little bit of the situation to the episode tonight, because without that, you probably would just be hearing hearsay about how bad it was and had not heard any of the audio from the actual fight. But after we got done, I ran upstairs crying, and I phoned Taylor, and I spent about an hour on the phone with Taylor, calming down and asking him what had happened at the cocktail party, and what he had discussed, and why he had discussed it, and how this happened. As it boils down, it's not about anything I said or anything Taylor said. It was about Leanne's behavior. And no amount of, somebody saying something that, by the way, was never told to me that it was a secret, that needed to be kept to to my deathbed. No one deserves to be treated the way I was treated. And no one deserves that type of abuse, regardless of what was said. And I understand that she, in her mind, thought that I had betrayed her in some way. But no amount of betrayal, certainly over poop, warrants the behavior that I was subjected to that night. It was very emotionally damaging for me. I spent most of that night up after I got off the phone with Taylor. I did not sleep well. As you see later on the next day, they make a choice to just split us up. We took 2 different cars and went to the Four Seasons, and then we had some time there. And it was sort of a judgment call that I made that I had to go and make the first move. I realized that, this is one night, it's one fight. This is a 19-year-old friendship. Was I going to let one bad night ruin somebody who's been in my life for a very, very long time? And my thought was, no. I'm gonna find out what's really behind this, and sooner or later we're going to get to the truth of how this shit in the bag in the back of the car came about, because it didn't come from me. So I did go in there, and more than anything, what I was looking for was I wanted her to hug me and tell me that she loved me. And I wanted her to say that she was sorry for the things that she said. And that wasn't exactly what I got. I did think it was necessary for us. I mean, it was a group trip. I wasn't wanting to let this ruin this birthday trip for everybody. So, I chose to put on a smile, and I chose to not dwell and continue to be visually affected by what had happened the night before. I'll just say for the common good, so that everybody could kind of move forward and enjoy the rest of their trip. I'm not sure I made the right choice. In hindsight, I don't know what I should have done. It's a good chance. If you'll read my blog on bravo.com, I go into a lot of thoughts there about this exact thing. I could have called 911 that night. I could have demanded that, they get me a car and I leave sooner. I could have done a lot of things. I never imagined that episode was going to really end our friendship. However, it kind of does. And even though we make up, there is, that's just something that was never the same after. Makeup on screen, obviously you saw. It was something that was never the same. I don't feel safe, and I don't know what it would take for me to feel safe again, to be intimate with her. And, I just think that a lot of people probably assume that domestic violence only happens between couples. And what I've learned the last year is anytime you open yourself up to somebody and you are intimate, whether it be, a good friend, a sister, maybe a sorority sister or a friend at school, there can be an abusive relationship at any level. And that's the thing that I think was the hardest for me. I had to see myself actually being victimized to realize that I was allowing myself to stay in a situation that was truly harming me, and it wasn't in my best interest. And for that, I am sorry. Like I said, I'm not sure I would do things the same as I did if I had to do it all over again. I will say that dinner at Bob's, the food was amazing. The dinner conversation was, quite honestly, the hardest meal I have ever had to sit through. Everybody seemed to be digging at everybody. I stayed very quiet. I just really, really wanted to hit the fast forward button and go home. I wanted to get home to sanity and safety. But yeah, it was a shame, because something that could have been a really, really great girls' weekend and a great fun trip turned into something that was absolutely none of those things. And it's a shame. It's a shame. Women's relationships are tough. And I always say that. I was like, girls can be so hard on each other. I wish that more of us were spending our time building each other up. And I'm going to try and focus on that. And hopefully, in my relationships that are continuing and new people, that I won't be stuck in a situation where I let myself be the victim of something, like that again. And Anything else? Does anybody have any questions that are maybe a little lighter?
One of the questions that came through was how some advice that you could give to young women on how to handle yourself in a situation like that.
Well, talk. You have to talk about it. If you don't be honest with yourself and honest with somebody else, and if you're a minor, you need to be honest with an adult. You have to talk to somebody about it, and maybe if you have a school counselor or someone perhaps at your church that you feel comfortable, you've got to tell people what's going on. Bullying and this type of abuse happens, and if we allow ourselves to stay in the situation where it continues to happen, we get desensitized to it to such a point that we become the new normal, where abuse becomes the new normal, and it seems natural. And that was mentioned in the spa tonight. Somebody said that. She's like, I think she's just been friends with her for so long that this is just how their relationship is. And the truth is, no, she'd never threatened me ever in our relationship for all this time. But because we have so much intimacy over all the years, I cut her a lot of slack for it. But definitely, talk to people. You can't do the whole thing on your own in your head. You've got to have an outside source help you with that.
Did you attend the reunion?
I did. Yes, I was at the reunion.
There's been lots of mention of Tiffany giving too much away. What are your thoughts on that?
I haven't seen what she's been trying to give away or not giving away, so I don't know. I think she's really excited about, more truth coming out. And the truth is, to me, the truth that you'll see on the reunion is actually not so good for her. But, whatever she says is her deal. Like, you do you. So.
Can you talk more about the role forgiveness played the day you tried to hug Leanne, the day after?
I have a set of principles that I live my life by, and one of them is that I don't go to bed with resentment, and I had huge resentment about the way I had been treated that day. And so for me, for my own sanity, my own life, I had to release that. I had to forgive her for the behavior. Doesn't mean I'm willing to subject myself to it again. Doesn't mean I'll tolerate anything like that again. But I had to forgive her. I really do think she wasn't in her right mind. I mean, there was no part of sanity at all in that attack. So yeah, for me, the forgiveness is something I have to do for myself, but it's certainly a gift you give to the other person too.
What do you think of X-Men Apocalypse?
Oh my goodness, I have not had time to see it. So I'll have to, as soon as we get done, this is episode 9, we have episode 10, and then reunions. So I think I'll be having a little bit more free time this summer, so I'll have to catch up on all the new releases.
Tiffany has been very cruel to Brandi this evening on her Twitter. What do you think of her calling Brandi a drunk and also attacking Stephanie in her tweets tonight?
I haven't seen them. I'm not going to, let's just say everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and if you have an opinion in a keyboard, you're going to use it. I think that's probably, ouch. I mean, Brandi has kids, people. I mean, who says things like that? I mean, that's just not a nice thing to say. I watched every one of those girls have too much to drink at one time or another. In this particular episode, yes, Brandi's pretty drunk at that dinner, but there were other times when, other people were. So, what goes around comes around. It's just a different person, different night. I think that's pretty harsh. But, if Tiffany has a computer and a keyboard and that's what she wants to express, I guess that's her freedom of speech.
What did you think of the lake house upon arrival?
I liked it. It's weird. Everybody kind of, Stephanie and Brandi were thinking, oh, they're going to think it's going to be really bad. And then I heard Tiffany and Leanne getting ready saying, oh, I bet it's going to be really ugly or, rustic. I had no expectations whatsoever. I think that's so funny. Like, everybody was thinking about the expectations of this house. I had none, absolutely none. So I was like, oh, this was pretty cool. I was just happy to be there. At the time we got there, I was like, yeah, this is awesome. And I had been tipped off by a friend who said, you have to run and get your room first. I was told it's like a housewives rule that when there's a cast trip, that you tear ass to get a room as soon as possible, because if you don't, you get stuck with the worst room or the worst roommate. So I listened to that and I ran, and I got the only room to myself, which I thought was amazing until I was all alone in it crying. Then it didn't seem quite so amazing. But anyway, yeah, the lake house was awesome.
What do you think of Courtney, Carrie's friend?
I think Courtney's hysterical. Courtney and I have remained good friends. We had lunch a couple weeks ago, and she's just a really neat girl. Yeah, she's got a really funny wit, and she travels a lot. She's a very interesting lady.
What can we expect for next week's show?
We're gonna, I think they did a little bit of a teaser, so you can see that we're, again, there'll be another party. It's actually not a charity party, though. This one is all about the golf tournament, the Byron Nelson golf tournament. And Stephanie and Travis live on the golf course at the Four Seasons where they host that tournament. So the basis of next week's story is all going to be about basically come to, the Byron Nelson party. And we also, you'll see, are still wrapping up some of the things that have happened throughout the season. So you'll still see some of those personalities and issues that have been happening kind of be plugged in there during the party, actually. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much for your support, and read my blog, and I will be back next week again to give you a recap on episode 10. Thank you.